All right, welcome to episode 3 of our short series of how-to videos about HuntSoft. And in our first episode, we talked about how to get set up with HuntSoft, how to create a property, how to upload your trail camera photos and sightings. And then in episode 2, we actually showed how HuntSoft is able to analyze that data and help you learn lessons that you can apply to your hunts. So we talked about all the different reports that HuntSoft can run. Now here in episode number 3, I want to show you a real life example of how I used HuntSoft. And I was testing out HuntSoft this summer into the early fall, and as I started accumulating data, I actually applied this tool to a hunt I had for a buck known as Jawbreaker. So here is a quick example of how I used it and how that story went down.
Alright, so at the beginning of the 2014 season, my main goal was to hunt a buck I called Jawbreaker. And through a lot of hunts and work, I ended up getting a shot at him in the middle of October. As many of you know and saw on Wired to Hunt, as you can see, here's a little clip of that shot. I was able to close the distance on him and get a shot. Unfortunately, did not recover him. That's a story for another day. But what I want to talk about here today was how I used HuntSoft in part to help develop the strategy that got me in a position to potentially get a shot at him. So, to start off, I was collecting data on Jawbreaker for the past 2 years. I had 2 years worth of sightings and trail camera photos, and I uploaded that to HuntSoft, and now I was able to go into the dashboard, look at my reports, and start looking at reports specifically, accumulating the data I had from Jawbreaker. So the first thing I looked at was movement by hour. What time of day was Jawbreaker most typically, active and moving on my hunting property? So when I pulled this report, filtered it for Jawbreaker, you could see here that the greatest number of entries I had were in the evening hours, that afternoon to evening. I was getting a lot of activity then, not so much in the morning during daylight. This is definitely something I was thinking about when I was going to start planning those first hunts for him this year. Next, I was going to look at wind direction, and this was a big thing. I wanted to understand on what wind directions is Jawbreaker moving the most on this property. So here I pull up the report, and then I filter by Jawbreaker, so I'm just looking at his entries, and when I'm looking here, I'm seeing a big pattern. Most of the movement is happening with some type of northerly wind direction, either north, northeast, north-northeast, or northwest, west-northwest. Whatever it was, almost all of my sightings, not all of them, but almost all of my sightings or trail camera pictures came with some type of northerly wind direction. And this is something I was really going to have to factor into my hunting strategy. And finally, I want to take a look at temperature change. Was the weather and temperature change at all affecting, when this buck was active? And I took a look, again, filtering by Jawbreaker, and could see now, what temperatures were I, getting the most sightings and pictures of. And again, this data is a little bit skewed in this case because a lot of these pictures were taken during the summer, and so the actual temperature was warm. But what I did then is I filtered by sightings, so not including trail camera pictures, just sightings. And this then showed a little bit more accurate, to real-time data, and showing that hey, there is a lot more activity from him that I'm actually seeing when there is a drop in temperature to some degree. So interesting. Now again, when I'm looking at all these reports, the big thing I took away from here is that I'm getting a lot more activity in the evenings, and I'm getting a lot more activity with some type of northerly wind direction. Those are the two things that I really took away from this little analysis I did. And I remember doing this at the very beginning of the 2014 season. I had the sightings and pictures from the year before. I had all the pictures from that summer, and then I showed up at the end of September. September 27th, I think, was the opener in Ohio, and I had pulled the cameras, and I had a whole bunch more pictures of him, again, moving in the evening during daylight near some of my hunting locations. So I wanted to put a plan together for the next day's hunt. Where do I need to be? What's the best possible option for me to get a shot at him? Because I know within the past 5 days he's been moving during daylight. So I pulled all these reports. I did this analysis. The analysis that I just walked you through right now, I did that on the evening of September 27th. And, I found what the two big things here I just mentioned were. He seems to be moving a lot more in the evenings, and he seems to be moving when there's some type of northerly direction. So I decided if I can get those factors lined up, that's a good time to get into moving one of these close spots to try to get a shot at him. So the next day, I ended up having those conditions. I had a northeast wind, and I figured I'm not going to hunt in the morning because he doesn't seem to be active. I'm just going to get out there in the evening. So I went in there, hunted this spot, I didn't end up seeing him, but it definitely played into my later hunt when I learned these things about him. 2 weeks later, I came back. It's a whole nother story of how I ended up having that hunt. But 2 weeks later, I came back and I hunted the same stand that I hunted on September 28th. That I kind of figured out I should be there based on this data. Well, I went in there on October 16th. Again, I had the right conditions. It was an evening hunt. I think I had a slightly west to west northwest wind. Again, something I factored in based on what I'd seen from this analysis. It looked like this should be the right spot to be. And long story short, he ended up coming in and I got that shot. Again, this is an example of how I was able to use HuntSoft. I was able to accumulate data over a couple of years, look at these reports to find out a couple patterns that I can then pull from that and apply to my hunts. And this was just one example with one buck. I'm continuing to do this with other deer and with other properties, and I think it's something that can really be helpful. When it comes to something like this, it really does come down to how much you want to put into it. If you're not going to upload a lot of photos and not going to upload all your sightings, it's not going to be very valuable. But if you want to put the time into it and upload the data, this is a great way to then be able to pull lessons learned from that data and actually be able to see patterns. And so that's why I'm excited about HuntSoft. That's why I've been using it. It's a helpful tool. It's something I'm sure to continue tinkering with, and hopefully this has been a helpful overview for you. So if you decide you want to check out HuntSoft, you'll have a better idea of how to make the best of it.